Hey, what is going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and quite recently I ended up covering Skeleton Key for the original Xbox. If you don't know what Skeleton Key is, that's fine, I'll kind of try to get you up to speed here, but Skeleton Key is an all-in-one toolkit or payload or even a little bit of like a Swiss Army knife or multi-tool, I guess you could say, which allows you to end up putting a payload onto a USB drive such as this one right here, and as long as you can get it adapted and working on an original working Xbox, you can then end up booting Skeleton Key, and it gives you access to a nice little suite of tools. At the time of recording, this includes XCAT, which is the Xbox Content Archive tool loader, the Insignia Setup Assistant, which allows you to register your console for Insignia, which is the replacement for Xbox Live. Yes, the original Xbox Live on the original Xbox, and it is free and pretty easy to use. There's a gamepad tester, a memory checker, XDON or Xbox Disk Over Network, which allows you to navigate any of the drives connected to your Xbox over your network using Fat Explorer, and finally, there's even the Rocky 5 softmod tool, which allows you to, well, pretty self-explanatory, softmod your original Xbox with Rocky 5's Xbox softmodding tool. And all of this is packaged together beautifully thanks to the power of PrometheOS and using the endgame exploit as an entry point, which again, allows you to, as long as you have a USB drive like this, it works on the original Xbox, and you can adapt it to the original Xbox, you can just get into Skeleton Key just like that. And you don't have to mod your Xbox either, by the way. And even if you use this, because there's a soft mod tool on there, you don't have to soft mod the system either. So for example, if you have an Xbox you want to keep completely stock for whatever reason, but you have a bunch of controllers you want to test, you can go ahead and use this to get into your gamepad tester and then test out all your controllers pretty easily. Now, Skeleton Key has been released to the community and packaged up by a community member and a friend of the channel here, Harcroft, and it's been a really awesome toolkit. There's been people who've been having a ton of fun using this, and there's even been people who have been going around and going to, for example, like retro game conventions and even giving out USB drives and adapters with Skeleton Key already on them, so people can do some things such as perform some maintenance on their original Xboxes, modify them, and even back up the content and archive them, whether it's for yourself or if you want to do it through XCAT. And by the way, we're going to talk about that later, but if you come across any original Xbox, run XCAT on it, please. That's going to be the new thing now. That's like the number one thing to do. The number one thing to do used to be check the clock capacitor, but now the number one thing that everybody recommends is run XCAT. And then check the clock capacitor, if it's applicable. Now, when I covered Skeleton Key, it ended up getting a really warm reception, and I, as well as many others, were incredibly happy to see that. However, there was something that I kept getting asked. It was actually about these little guys right here. Here's one of them. It was one of these adapters, and people were asking, hey, what is this? How can I get a hold of this? How can I make one of these here? Where do you get them? And I'll tell you this, I actually end up getting these from Harcroft. Okay, I'm lying. This one here, I actually end up building myself. As well as this one as well too. But the ones in that video, I got from Harcroft. But I'm making this video because I wanted to show you all how you can build your own Skeleton Key from scratch. Not only some people are really interested in this right here, but it's also just a fun project to do, and I just think it's really cool to be able to take some projects and build something physical from quite literally nothing. So this video is not necessarily going to show you the ins and outs of Skeleton Key. That's going to be a previous video that I've covered, and I'll have it linked down below in the description. But if you are interested in making your own Skeleton Key kit from scratch, this is going to be the video for you. Now, the Skeleton Key project, you're already able to go in and download it and copy the files to a USB drive, or even take an image and flash it over to that USB drive. However, if you're wanting to build all this from scratch here, this is possible, well, thanks to Harcroft here. He ended up releasing instructions on how to do this, and he ended up making a GitHub repository with the PCBs and all the information needed for free. It's open source, and anybody can go out and do it, as long as you're willing to put in a little bit of time, put in maybe an order or two, and then do a little bit of assembly. So that way you can turn one of these USB drives, well, into a Skeleton Key. You like how I did that? Yeah, no, this stuff is cool. So I got some of the raw components here, which is really just a female USB adapter, a USB drive, which is compatible. This is like a cheap 128GB one. And of course, these PCBs end up getting fabricated thanks to the sponsor of this video here, PCBWay. And actually, I'll use this sponsor opportunity to even show you how you can get this fabricated and built out. Now, in case you haven't used them before, PCBWay is essentially a one-stop shop for any of your printed circuit board type needs. And one thing I do like to mention as well is that I was actually using PCBWay for a few orders before, like years before I got sponsored by them as well too. So they've been great so far. Now, they do printed circuit board prototyping, fabricating. They even make flex PCBs, 3D printing, and assembly as well too. There's a lot of features that they do have available. Thankfully, between the Skeleton Skeleton Key project and PCBWay, it made it pretty simple to order these. What you need to do is go to the links down below in the description. There's going to be the Xbox Skeleton Key USB adapter GitHub repository, a little bit of a mouthful, but it's there. Go ahead, go over to the releases section and download whichever Gerber releases you are looking for. This comes in two variants. There is a standard one that looks a little something like this, and there's also a gold one, which is, well, gold, and it looks pretty nice. Now, once you have the downloads you want to get fabricated, you just need to go over to PCBWay, go over to the PCB int and quote section, and upload that zip file or both zip files, whatever you want to do. You do have to do them one at a time at least. From here, you can go ahead and dial in your settings, but the main requirement is going to be the thickness. You see, these have to be anywhere from 1.0 to 1.2 millimeters in thickness. The ones I got printed up are 1 millimeter in thickness, and they seem to work just fine. Oh, but one thing to keep in mind, specifically for the gold one, you're going to want to pick the Immersion Gold ENIG for the surface finish. That is going to be needed for that one. For the other one, I used Hassel with lead, and that was just fine. Now, to keep this in line with the intended design, but also my own preferences, you can get whatever solder mask you want, but I chose to get the black solder mask with the white silk screen. I went with black because, well, as Master Shake once said,
the ink being black,
everything must be black, like the storm of justice.
Well, maybe you better talk to them then.
once you have everything dialed in and ordered to your preference, you just need to wait, and hopefully in a short amount of time, you'll have your printed circuit boards like these two right here. Now, I will say I was really happy with how these two came out. I didn't have any issues with them. Soldering onto them was a breeze as well, and they've been working incredibly well for me. So again, a big thank you to PCBWay and of course Harcroft for putting out this project here. Now, if you're interested in getting these fabricated through PCBWay, I'm going to have a link down below in the description, and if you're a new member of PCBWay, you'll get $5 that you can use towards your first order. So hopefully that helps out to pay for a few of these PCBs if you're wanting to get this all set up and fabricated. Again, a big thank you and shout out to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. But let's go ahead and continue on here. Now, this really consists of 3 components, and with the printed circuit board out of the way, we have 1/3 of this completed, but we're going to need 2 other things. The second thing we're going to need is one of these female USB adapters, because we're going to have to take these and physically attach them and solder them into the PCBs. These ones I end up ordering off of AliExpress. I was able to get a pack of like 30 of them for pretty cheap, so I'll have the links for really everything down below in the description. And the last thing is going to be getting a compatible USB drive. Now, you all might notice with my USB drive here, for example, it is just a standard black one. It's only 128 megabytes, which you don't need any more than that. It's going to be fine for this here. We're only using it on an original Xbox, and you can see here that it does have the Skeleton Key logo printed on there. Well, that's because for some of these cheap USB drives, and actually a lot of times these small cheap ones end up working pretty well for the original Xbox, with these cheap USB drives, there's some services and some sellers that you can go to where you can actually get something silk screened and customized on there. Thankfully, the entire Skeleton Key repository was created with this in mind, so really all you need to do is go over there, download the image that is on the repository, and then find a USB drive or a seller of USB drives that allows this. You're going to want to make sure they're compatible with the original Xbox as well. So at least the ones that I'm using are compatible on the original Xbox. I'm also going to have a list of drives that are compatible, but if you are wanting to get this customized, you just need to contact this seller. It depends on which service you're going to be using. Contact the seller if they have this available, send them the image, and just please let them know nicely at least that you would like this on there. That's of course if they offer it. Not every single seller of bulk small USB drives like this is going to offer it, but the one I did ended up doing so. So now that we have all of our components in place, we can finally start getting everything put together. Now, thankfully, putting this together is pretty easy in my opinion, even though this does require soldering. And I will say here, I stopped doing this years ago, but I don't really like to assign difficulty to soldering related projects. I used to say this is easy or this is difficult or what have you, but the reality is that every single person out there is going to have their own skill set and their own difficulty scale that they're going to work with. So for me, for example, doing RGH3 on an Xbox 360 used to seem pretty daunting. At this point now, I could do it in my sleep, but I'm not going to go around telling people it's easy, because it is easy for me to do, but it's not going to be easy for most people out there to perform. It's just easy for me to do because I've had so much practice with it. But this one is like, no, even if you really haven't soldered things before, you might have some difficulty with this, but this is honestly, if you're wanting to get into soldering and fabricating and working and putting some things together like on a PCB, This is a great starter project. I cannot stress that enough. This is an awesome starter project. And if you screw it up, well, guess what? You can get these things in bulk, so you can kind of just toss it out and try another one. So I'll show you here at least how I did it, and if you want to follow along, feel free to. But what you can do is first take your printed circuit board. We're going to flip it upside down, and then take one of your female USB jacks right here, or adapters or ports, I guess, and you're just going to want to plop it in. It's going to be super simple. You just need to fit it in right here. And the 6 legs on the USB port end up going through these 6 holes on the PCB. Thankfully, you can't really screw this one up. Just keep in mind that this is the top of the PCB right here. You're going to want to put it into the bottom. That's really all you need to look out for, and it's keyed pretty well. What I then like to do is make sure it is stable and make sure it's in proper place, and then this step is optional, but I will say this, it is more aesthetically pleasing, and in my opinion is going to look nicer. And a big shout out to Harcroft for this one here as well, because he ended up giving this tip. What you can do, this is again optional, completely optional here, but if you have some flush cutters, you can go in and trim the legs down. Just trim all 6 legs if you want to. This is just going to have it look nicer once this is all assembled. And from here, once you have this all set up, what I do is take a little bit of no clean flux, dab a drop or 2 on here, then I take a little bit of solder, put it onto the end of my soldering iron, and then just lock in 1 or 2 points on here. They do not need to look good, you just need enough solder that you can physically attach the USB port to the PCB itself, and that way once it's locked in and stabilized, we can work on the other ones. So there you go. Once you have this locked in, we can now work on the other 4 or 5. What you can do is, again, just do the same thing. Now we can do it a little bit cleaner, but just take a little bit of flux. I use no clean flux for this. Apply it on there, then take your soldering iron, make sure it is clean, and then start hitting each of these pads and introduce a little bit of fresh solder to make sure all the legs are connected. And if you had 1 or 2 legs that you ended up locking in like a few seconds ago, you can go ahead and redo those real quick just to make sure they all look nice. So now that the standard one has been completed, let's go ahead and work on the gold one. I'm showing both these here because there is a little bit of a difference. You see on the gold one here, the actual gold printing is not a silk screen. That's actually the material that you could solder onto. So the reason why I'm mentioning that is because the gold one is going to be a little bit harder, like just a little bit harder if you haven't done this stuff before. And it can get a little bit messy. So if you're wanting a little bit more of a challenge, the gold one is nice. But if you can get one of these gold ones looking really pretty, I think you're in a good spot. It's just going to be the exact same process as before, but again, on the gold one, you just want to be a little more careful with your soldering iron so you don't make the rest of this look really messy. And then once it's completed, there you go. You just end up assembling your own USB adapter. Now the final component is going to be the software side, and this is going to be the USB drive. This one we can go ahead and set up on our PC. Go ahead, take your USB drive, plug it into your computer, and we're going to get the files that we need. If you need to see this in much more granular detail, again, my first video on Skeleton Key goes through the setup completely from scratch, going over every little point for the software side of house. This is just going to quickly go over it, but essentially what you want to do is navigate over to the Digix thread for the Skeleton Key release. You don't want to download the MU version, just download the standard Skeleton Key release, or if you have a bigger USB drive such as a 256 or 512 megabyte image, you can go ahead and download those. But I'm going to be working with the standard one right here. Once you have it downloaded, go ahead and extract it out and then look at the files that are available. You're going to have a Skeleton Key folder, and you're also going to have an image file. If you want to use the image file, you can download a program such as Balena Etcher. Go ahead, download that, get it all set up, and then from there, you just go through the process. You fire up the program, select your image, select your drive. If it gives you any prompt about like storage on there, just say yes, that's going to be fine. Even if the storage mismatches, it should probably work on there, and then wait for the image to flash over to your USB drive, verify, and at that point, it's done. You can disconnect it, and there you go. You have made your own Skeleton Key from scratch. Alternatively, if you do not want to use that, you can use the latest Fat Explorer beta. Just go ahead, download it, fire it up. If you haven't used this before, it does have a 7-day free trial window that you could use. I personally use it so often that I end up purchasing it. Not affiliated, not sponsored by them, I just really love the software. However, you can do the same thing here. It's a few more steps. First, you'll need to take your USB drive and format it within Fat Explorer. Once it's formatted, you then need to mount it. If you haven't installed the driver for FATX on your computer, make sure you do that and then restart your computer. But once you have formatted that drive through Fat Explorer, you can go ahead and mount it. And once it shows up on your computer as a regular USB drive, you can go into the Skeleton Key folder, and there's going to be inside of there a helper folder, a trigger folder, and a payload.xbe. Very simple at this point. Highlight all of them, copy them, and paste them to your USB drive. Then unmount your drive using Fat Explorer, and just like before, you're done. That's it. And of course, to fire this up, it's pretty simple. You need your stock original Xbox, make sure you have a controller plugged in, and from here, go ahead and grab your USB adapter that you just created, then plug them in like this, and then plug them into any of the unpopulated ports on your original Xbox while you're at the dashboard. Just make sure you don't have any games inserted. From here, once it is plugged in, navigate over to the memory section, find the memory unit which is showing up, that's going to be your skeleton key, and navigate into it. It is going to freeze your Xbox, the screen is going to be black except for a green orb, and if you have one of these USB drives that has a LED indicator, that is good because you're going to notice that it's going to start flashing. That means it's copying the payload file from your USB drive to the internal drive of the original Xbox. After some time, once it is completed, your Xbox should go completely black, wait a few seconds, and then it's going to boot up into skeleton key. And if it does, congratulations, you're now good at this point. By the way, if this is an Xbox that you just bought or you just found or whatever it is, I would highly recommend at this point here, if you're at this menu, plug in an Ethernet cable to your Xbox to get it on your network, get it connected online, and then run XCAT on here. This will go through and scan your hard drive for any files that might not have been archived for the greater community, and it will upload them so that way the administrators behind XCAT can go through, see what content has been uploaded, and make sure it gets to the proper channels. This has been such an invaluable application, and even more invaluable once it is packed into skeleton key, because this has helped bring some games back online. This has helped find lost downloadable content. This has helped find lost title updates, which, like I said to the first point, there was a poker game that was quite literally, it had Xbox Live compatibility, and it was quite literally unplayable. You could not play it online unless you had the latest update. And there was a person who ended up finding an original Xbox which was completely in horrible condition. They were going to toss the case because the case was completely busted up, but they ran XCAT on that super busted up, broken Xbox that barely worked. It was able to archive the latest title update, and it had that game working for the first time in well over a decade online. Now that's why some tools like this are so important. So I do want to take some time out and talk about really like my love for skeleton key and why I do really believe in this project here and why I'm showing this to you all. Because some people might be wondering, what is the point to this here? I could just get a USB drive, I could just get an adapter, I could do all this. First of all, with like getting a USB drive like this, I'm of the belief of like, no, these USB drives are really cheap, they're plentiful enough if you order them. Also, it's just copying and pasting some files. I'm of the belief that you shouldn't be paying for someone to copy and paste some free files to a USB drive. Making these adapters as well too, not only it's a cool, fun thing, it's nice and compact, but especially if you're going to be buying or fabricating or building these out in bulk, that is where you kind of get these savings on there. And that is something I want to talk about. I've actually seen a lot of people tell stories, share experiences like this, where there's people who run Xbox related shops, and if you end up ordering a certain amount, they throw in a skeleton key for free. There's people such as Hardcroft and other people who actually create these skeleton keys. They go to conventions, they go to LAN parties, they pass these things out, they tell them about this. There's even other people who go to like retro or local video game stores and they tell them about some of the capabilities with skeleton key, with XCAT, with some of these other applications. So that way, even if you don't want to modify your original Xbox in any way, it is still a really helpful tool. Think about this. What if you're running a game shop and you have a bunch of controllers and you need to test them out, but you just don't want to like sit there and find the right game to do it all? There is a gamepad tester on here and it's really easy to get into thanks to skeleton key. So that's one of those really nice benefits. So I'm not saying we all need to go out and assemble our own skeleton key kits and then start dropping them in front of conventions and game stores like, you know, Mr. Robot style. No, I'm not saying that. Like literally, I'm not saying that. But those are some of the examples of what people in the community have been doing to get these projects out there and to make stuff like this more accessible. Not only making easy to find, easy to make, free and open source hardware, as well as having really easy software to back this up with. Plus, I really haven't talked about this. This is actually the first time I'm talking about it here. But with the original Xbox, it does have several faults in it which have prevented it from aging well. Not only the capacitors are dying on these things, the disk drives have not been the most reliable. You know, now that these systems are dang near what, like 25 years old at this point. I know that's scary to think about, but they are not new systems by any means. They are old systems. The hard drives are locked and paired to the motherboards, and the hard drives are of course aging as well too. They're old IDE drives. The reason why I'm bringing all this up is because the original Xbox is a fantastic system. It's a system that I love. It's a system that many other people love. It's a system that a ton of people still want to get into. And even now in the modern era of having emulation available on PC, on the Xbox 360, which is also an old system, system, but even newer systems such as the Xbox One, despite being old as well too now, and even the Xbox Series, you do have emulation on there, but not only it can introduce its own quirks and inaccuracies, but you quite simply cannot play the entire original Xbox library on an emulated setup. And even if you do, there's going to be issues that you'll run into. So therefore, in terms of accuracy and reliability, the best place to play the entire original Xbox library is on the original Xbox. And I say this here not to sell you all on the idea of picking up an original Xbox, but I'm saying this because the reality is that some people can argue that the time is now, but I truly believe within the next 5 years, and if not 5 years, definitely within the next 10 years, to even just use the original Xbox in any type of capacity, you're going to have to modify it in some way. You're going to have to do a hard mod. If you don't want to do a hard mod, you're going to need to do a soft mod. And if you don't want to do a soft mod, you're going to need to do some other kind of maintenance or something else that is going to require a level of modding. Let's say you have a completely stock Xbox and you want to keep it that way, you don't want to modify it at all, but the hard drive dies. You're going to have to use modding tools in order to build a new hard drive and lock it to the original Xbox. So see, even using it in a stock capacity, if something breaks, you're going to have to get familiar with modding tools and modding in some way just to use this system. That is why I think projects like this are so important. And maybe getting a compatible USB drive right now is easy to do, but it was easier before, and it might not get any easier in the future. And especially original Xbox USB adapters, of course, those are easy to do as well. You can even build your own using an Xbox breakaway cable and a female USB cable. I've done it. You don't even need to solder for that. However, that requires destroying some of the original hardware, splicing it in, doing those modifications, which people don't want to do. So if we can still save original aging hardware like this just by fabricating our own, I think that's fantastic. Anyways, that's about it for this video here. Let me know what you all thought of it, and let me know if you're going to be building your own skeleton key kits, because I will say this was a fun one. And even if you are kind of scared of soldering, if you're not really into it, if you've been maybe on the edge of I want to, but I'm not sure, this is a great starter project to get into, and it has a pretty immediate effect, and in my opinion, it's actually pretty useful as well too, if you're really working with the original Xbox, and that is something that you love and enjoy or want to delve further into. Either way, that is about it for this video here. This is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated, and if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well, too.